The red and blue lights flashed against the pitch-black night, the wailing siren piercing through the quiet of the empty street. "Step out of the vehicle, hands where I can see them." The voice barked through the loudspeaker, sharp and commanding. Olivia Carter, a black woman in her early 30s, gripped the steering wheel tightly, her heart pounding in her chest. She was dressed professionally, her FBI badge tucked inside her blazer, but she knew this wasn't a normal traffic stop. As she stepped out, her hands raised high, the officer stormed toward her, his hand resting on the holster of his gun. His tone was colder than the December air. "What are you doing in this neighborhood at this time of night?" he demanded, eyes scanning her as if she were a threat. Olivia calmly began to explain, but before she could reach for her identification, he grabbed her wrist roughly, twisting her arm behind her back. "What do you think you're doing?" Olivia said firmly, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Don't talk back," he snapped, forcing her against the hood of her car. The rough surface scraped her cheek as she tried to speak again. "I'm a federal agent," she managed to say, her voice slightly muffled. "Yeah, sure you are," he sneered, pulling out his cuffs. "That's a good one." At that moment, a black SUV with government plates screeched to a stop, and out stepped 3 armed agents, badges gleaming under the streetlight. The lead agent yelled, "Release her immediately. She's one of ours." The officer froze, his face draining of color as he realized his mistake. Olivia slowly stood, brushing herself off, her eyes burning into the officer's. "Now what are you going to do about this?" she asked, her tone icier than the night. The officer stammered, unable to form a coherent response, but before Olivia could say more, one of the agents whispered urgently into her ear, "We have bigger problems right now." What could possibly be more pressing than this blatant act of racial profiling? Olivia's jaw tightened as she glanced at the agent, her mind racing. Earlier that evening, Olivia had been working late at the field office, her desk a cluttered mess of files and coffee cups. She had been tracking a high-profile case involving a dangerous network of criminals who were evading federal authorities. It had taken months of undercover work to finally get close to cracking the operation, and tonight was supposed to be the turning point. As she gathered her files to head home, her phone buzzed with a text. It was from her supervisor, Mark Reynolds. "Urgent. A suspect on the case has been spotted near 12th and Green. Can you swing by and check it out?" Without hesitation, Olivia grabbed her coat and keys, knowing this might be the lead they'd been waiting for. Driving through the quiet streets, she noticed a police car following her. It wasn't unusual in this line of work, especially when heading toward a high-crime area. She kept her focus on the mission at hand, but as the police car's lights flashed, she sighed. "Here we go." She pulled over, expecting a routine check. Instead, she was met with hostility and suspicion from the officer. Olivia knew better than to escalate the situation, but her patience wore thin as he ignored her every attempt to explain. The confrontation had drawn a small crowd. People peeked through their windows, their faces dimly visible behind curtains. A man on his porch recorded the incident on his phone, his hands shaking with either anger or fear. Olivia was acutely aware of the growing audience, and it fueled her resolve. After the other agents intervened, Olivia was left to decide her next move. She could report the officer for misconduct, but her gut told her this wasn't just about her. This was about the countless others who wouldn't have backup or the benefit of a badge to protect them. She turned to the officer, who was still pale and sweating. "You need to think long and hard about why you stopped me tonight," she said. Her voice was calm, but the weight of her words lingered in the cold air. "Next time, you might not get off so easy." The agent who had pulled her aside earlier handed her a file. "Olivia, it's bad. The suspect isn't alone. We've got intel that they're meeting tonight at the old warehouse on 14th. Adrenaline replaced Olivia's anger as she nodded. "Let's go," she said, climbing into the SUV. As they sped off into the night, Olivia couldn't shake the officer's face from her mind. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for now, she had to focus. Lives were on the line, and she had a job to do. Back at the precinct, the officer sat in his cruiser, watching them drive away. He wasn't done either. He picked up his radio and muttered, "I want every detail on that woman. Who is she, really?" The night was far from over, and neither Olivia nor the officer could predict what would happen next. The black SUV weaved through the dark streets, its headlights cutting through the fog. Inside, Olivia Carter scanned the file handed to her. The suspect's name, Victor Morales, was highlighted in bold letters. He was a known associate of a criminal syndicate specializing in arms trafficking. Olivia's gut told her this wasn't just a routine surveillance mission. Something bigger was at play. Warehouse on 14th, she murmured to herself, flipping through the pages. It was a location they had suspected for months, but could never confirm as a hub for criminal activity. Now, with Victor allegedly meeting other members of the syndicate there, it seemed everything was coming to a head. Agent Reynolds, sitting in the passenger seat, glanced at her. "You okay?" That scene back there was, he hesitated, searching for the right words. "Unacceptable," Olivia finished for him. "But I don't have time to process it right now. Focus on the mission." Reynolds nodded, understanding her need to compartmentalize. "We've got backup on standby if things go south." "Good," Olivia replied. "Because something tells me it's going to." The SUV pulled into a deserted alley a few blocks from the warehouse. Olivia and the team exited quietly, each agent checking their gear. The air was thick with tension as they approached the building, its rusted exterior looming ominously in the moonlight. Inside the warehouse, Victor Morales paced nervously. The dim light from a single overhead bulb cast shadows across his face, making him look more sinister than usual. Around him, 3 men and a woman sat at a makeshift table, discussing plans in hushed tones. "We've got to move this shipment tonight," Victor said, his voice sharp. "Feds are sniffing around too close." One of the men, a burly figure with a scar running down his cheek, scoffed. "Relax, Morales. You're always jumping at shadows. They've got no idea we're here." Victor wasn't convinced. His instincts were screaming that something was wrong, but he didn't have time to argue. "Fine," he muttered. "Let's just get it done." Unbeknownst to them, Olivia and her team were watching from a concealed vantage point. She adjusted her earpiece and whispered, "I count 5 hostiles. Possible weapons on site. No sign of additional reinforcements yet." "Orders?" Reynolds asked. "We go in quiet," Olivia replied. "Minimize risk. We need Morales alive for interrogation." As the team prepared to breach, Olivia's thoughts drifted momentarily to the officer from earlier. His blatant racism had been infuriating, but it wasn't new to her. What stung more was the realization that even with her credentials, she wasn't immune. She pushed the thought aside. Dwelling on it would only distract her from the task at hand. The signal was given, and the team moved in. The warehouse door creaked as it swung open, and for a brief moment, the occupants inside were frozen with shock. Then chaos erupted. "FBI. Don't move!" Olivia shouted, her voice cutting through the commotion. Victor bolted for the exit, but Olivia was faster. She tackled him to the ground, pinning him with practiced ease. "You're not going anywhere," she said, cuffing his hands behind his back. Meanwhile, the rest of the team subdued the other suspects. It was over in minutes, but the adrenaline coursing through Olivia's veins made it feel like hours. She hauled Victor to his feet and turned to Reynolds. "Secure the scene. I'm taking him in for questioning." Back at the field office, Victor sat in an interrogation room, his hands cuffed to the table. Olivia entered, her expression unreadable as she dropped the file onto the table. She sat across from him, her piercing gaze never leaving his face. "You've got 2 options, Victor," she said. "You can talk, or you can go down for everything we've got on you. And trust me, it's enough to put you away for life." Victor leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips. "You think you've won? You've got no idea what you're dealing with." Olivia leaned forward, her voice low and threatening. "Enlighten me." Victor's smirk faltered, but before he could respond, an explosion rocked the building. The lights flickered, and alarms blared as smoke began to fill the air. Olivia sprang to her feet, her hand instinctively reaching for her weapon. She glanced at Victor, who looked genuinely terrified for the first time. "What the hell is going on?" she demanded. Victor shook his head, his voice trembling. "They're here. You don't understand. They'll kill us all." Before Olivia could question him further, the door burst open, and Reynolds appeared, coughing from the smoke. "We've got to evacuate. Now." Olivia grabbed Victor by the arm and dragged him out of the room. The hallways were chaos, agents scrambling to find the source of the explosion while ensuring everyone got out safely. Olivia's mind raced. Who could be behind this? Was it the syndicate trying to silence Victor, or was there an even bigger threat looming? As they exited the building, a black van screeched to a halt in front of them. Masked figures emerged, armed and ready. Olivia shoved Victor behind her, drawing her gun. "Get down," she shouted as bullets began to fly. The night erupted into chaos once more, and Olivia realized this was far from over. Bullets ricocheted off parked cars and street lamps, the sharp cracks echoing in the night. Olivia ducked behind a concrete barrier, her heart pounding. Victor cowered next to her, his face pale with terror. "Stay down," Olivia barked, firing a controlled burst toward the masked figures advancing on them. She tapped her earpiece. "Reynolds. Status." Reynolds' voice came through, strained but audible. "We've got agents pinned at the east entrance. Hostiles everywhere. Who are these guys?" "I was hoping you'd tell me," Olivia snapped, glancing over the barrier to assess their attackers. These weren't amateurs. Their movements were coordinated, their firepower substantial. Whoever they were, they wanted Victor badly, and they didn't care how many casualties it took to get him. Victor clutched Olivia's arm. "You don't understand. These people aren't just my associates. They're cleaners. They've come to erase me." Olivia glared at him. "What did you do?" "I didn't finish a deal. I thought I could run. They don't let people run." His voice cracked, panic setting in. "Well, they're not getting you tonight," Olivia said firmly. She tapped her earpiece again. "Reynolds, I'm heading for the extraction point with Victor. Cover us." "Copy that," Reynolds replied. "We'll buy you some time." Olivia grabbed Victor by the collar and pulled him to his feet. "Move," she ordered, keeping her body between him and the gunfire. They sprinted toward a nearby alley, dodging bullets as agents from the field office engaged the masked attackers. The alley offered temporary cover, but Olivia knew they weren't safe yet. Victor stumbled, gasping for breath. I can't run anymore." "You don't have a choice," Olivia said, scanning their surroundings. The black van was still parked at the curb, and more masked figures were pouring out. "We need to get you to safety, or you're as good as dead." Victor's eyes darted around frantically. "There's a safe house 2 blocks from here. I can." "No," Olivia cut him off. "You're staying with me. Now keep moving." They exited the alley and ran toward a secondary exit point where another SUV was waiting. Olivia's earpiece crackled. "Carter, this is Reynolds. Hostiles are retreating, but we've got heavy casualties. Are you clear?" "Almost there," Olivia replied. She reached the SUV and pushed Victor inside, slamming the door behind him. She climbed into the driver's seat and gunned the engine. The SUV tore through the streets, Olivia's knuckles white as she gripped the wheel. Victor sat in the back seat, trembling. "They won't stop," he muttered. "They'll keep coming. Then we'll keep stopping them," Olivia said flatly. She turned a corner sharply, heading toward a secure location Reynolds had sent her. As they drove, her mind raced. Who were these cleaners? Were they tied to the syndicate, or was this something bigger? Suddenly, the SUV's tires screeched as an explosion lit up the road ahead. Olivia slammed on the brakes, barely avoiding the flames. Another black van appeared, blocking their path. "Out of the car!" Olivia shouted, grabbing her weapon. She pulled Victor out with her and ran toward an abandoned building for cover. The masked attackers were on them again, and Olivia returned fire, each shot precise and deliberate. Victor tripped and fell, and Olivia spun around to help him. A masked figure lunged at them, but Olivia took him down with a swift kick, disarming him and pinning him to the ground. She removed his mask, revealing a young man with fear in his eyes. "Who sent you?" Olivia demanded, pressing the muzzle of her gun against his temple. "I don't know," he stammered. "We're just paid to take the target." "Who paid you?" she pressed, but a gunshot rang out, and the man slumped beneath her. Olivia looked up to see another masked figure aiming at her, but before he could fire, Reynolds appeared and took him out. "You okay?" Reynolds asked, pulling Olivia to her feet. "Thanks to you," she replied. "But we've got a problem. These aren't just random thugs. Someone's pulling strings, and they have deep pockets." Reynolds glanced at Victor. "Does he know who?" "Probably," Olivia said, grabbing Victor by the arm. "But first, we need to make sure he stays alive long enough to talk." They eventually reached the safe house, a nondescript building in a quiet neighborhood. Inside, the walls were reinforced, and the windows were bulletproof. Olivia and Reynolds secured the area, then turned their attention to Victor. "You're going to start talking," Olivia said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Who are these cleaners, and why are they after you?" Victor hesitated, his eyes darting between Olivia and Reynolds. "Finally," he sighed. "The syndicate hires them to clean up loose ends. Anyone who poses a threat to their operations gets wiped out, no questions asked." "And what makes you a threat?" Olivia asked. Victor swallowed hard. "I have information, locations of their safe houses, names of their top operatives, details of upcoming deals. I was going to use it as leverage to disappear, but they found out." Olivia exchanged a glance with Reynolds. "This information, do you have it on you?" Victor nodded. "It's on a flash drive. Hidden at my apartment." Reynolds groaned. "Great. Let me guess, it's not close." Victor shook his head. "It's in the middle of the city. And if they're looking for me, they're probably watching it." "Perfect," Olivia muttered. She turned to Reynolds. "We need that drive. I'll take Victor with me. You coordinate with the team and keep those cleaners off our backs." Reynolds hesitated, then nodded. "Be careful, Carter. They won't hesitate to kill you." "They'll have to catch me first," Olivia replied, her jaw set with determination. As they prepared to leave, Victor looked at Olivia, his fear momentarily replaced with gratitude. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Don't thank me yet," Olivia said, checking her weapon. "This isn't over." The sound of engines outside made her freeze. She peeked through the window and saw several vehicles pulling up. "Looks like they found us," she said grimly. The safe house was about to become a battleground. The roar of engines outside the safe house sent a chill down Olivia's spine. She quickly ushered Victor into a back room, motioning for him to stay quiet. "Don't move until I say," she ordered, her voice low but firm. Reynolds, standing by the window with his weapon drawn, glanced at Olivia. "How'd they track us so fast?" "Probably not by accident," Olivia muttered, checking her firearm. "Victor's valuable. They've got resources, and they're not going to stop until they get him." Reynolds nodded grimly. "We hold them off as long as we can. Reinforcements are en route." As the first masked figure approached the house, Olivia crouched near the door, her breathing steady. She signaled Reynolds, and they exchanged a quick nod. The moment the figure tried to breach the door, Olivia fired, hitting him in the leg and sending him crumpling to the ground. The attackers didn't hesitate. Gunfire erupted, bullets tearing into the reinforced walls of the safe house. Olivia and Reynolds returned fire, each shot measured and deliberate. The air was thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder as the standoff intensified. In the back room, Victor huddled against the wall, his breathing shallow. Every shot fired outside made him flinch. His thoughts raced as guilt and fear consumed him. "They're risking their lives for me," he thought. "I have to do something." He noticed a small window above him, just large enough to crawl through. If he could get to his apartment and retrieve the flash drive, maybe this nightmare could end. Summoning his courage, he climbed onto a nearby chair, pushed the window open, and slipped out. Meanwhile, Olivia noticed the sudden decrease in incoming fire. "They're repositioning," she said to Reynolds, her tone sharp. "Stay alert." She moved toward the back room to check on Victor, but stopped in her tracks when she saw the open window. "Damn it," she hissed. "He's gone." Reynolds joined her, his expression darkening. He bolted? Unbelievable. What was he thinking? Olivia grabbed her radio. "Victor's on foot. They'll find him before we do if we don't move now." "Go," Reynolds said. "I'll hold them here." "You sure?" Olivia asked. Reynolds smirked. "I've got this. Go get our guy." Without another word, Olivia sprinted out the back, her weapon drawn. The night was eerily quiet compared to the chaos she'd just left. She scanned the area, her sharp instincts guiding her. Tracks in the snow led toward the nearby alley, and she followed them, her mind racing. Victor moved as quickly as he could, ducking behind dumpsters and slipping through alleys. He knew the cleaners wouldn't stop, but he also knew Olivia wouldn't give up on him. "If I can just make it to the apartment." His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind him. He turned to see 3 masked figures closing in. Panicking, he bolted, weaving through narrow alleyways, but they were gaining on him. Just as he thought he was out of options, a figure emerged from the shadows ahead. It was Olivia, her gun trained on the attackers. "Get down," she shouted at Victor. He dropped to the ground as Olivia opened fire, her shots precise. 2 of the attackers went down, but the third dove behind a dumpster, returning fire. Olivia crouched behind a stack of crates, her mind working rapidly. She could hear the attacker reloading, and she seized the moment. Springing from her cover, she fired twice, hitting the last attacker in the shoulder. He dropped his weapon, groaning in pain. Olivia moved quickly, kicking his gun away and pinning him down. "Who sent you?" she demanded, pressing her knee into his chest. The man sneered, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. "You're already dead, Agent Carter. You just don't know it yet." Olivia's eyes narrowed, but she didn't have time to interrogate him further. Sirens wailed in the distance, signaling the arrival of backup. She turned to Victor, who was still cowering on the ground. "You're lucky I found you," she said, pulling him to his feet. "Let's go. We don't have much time." They arrived at Victor's apartment just as dawn broke. The streets were quiet, the city still asleep. Olivia kept her weapon ready as they entered the building, her senses on high alert. Inside the apartment, Victor quickly retrieved the flash drive from a hidden compartment in the wall. He held it up triumphantly, but Olivia wasn't impressed. "Good. Now let's get out of here before." The door burst open, and 3 more masked attackers stormed in. Olivia shoved Victor behind her and opened fire, taking down one of them immediately. The other 2 scattered, using the furniture for cover. A tense gunfight ensued, bullets flying in every direction. Olivia's training and precision gave her the upper hand, but the attackers were relentless. She managed to take down a second one, but the third lunged at her, knocking her weapon from her hand. They grappled, the attacker's strength overwhelming. Olivia fought back with every ounce of her training, finally delivering a sharp elbow to his ribs and flipping him onto the floor. She grabbed her weapon and aimed it at him, her breathing heavy. "It's over," she said, her voice steely. The attacker smirked. "Not yet." He reached for a device on his belt, but before he could activate it, Victor stepped forward and slammed a vase over his head, knocking him unconscious. Olivia stared at Victor, both surprised and impressed. "Nice timing," she said. Victor shrugged, a nervous smile on his face. "Figured I owed you one." Olivia nodded, pocketing the flash drive. "Let's get out of here before more show up." As they exited the building, Olivia's phone buzzed. It was Reynolds. "Carter, where are you? We've got a major lead on who's behind this." "I'll be there in 10, she replied, glancing at Victor. "And I've got the drive." "Good," Reynolds said. "You're going to want to see this." Olivia hung up, her mind racing. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together, but something told her they were far from the endgame. As the SUV sped toward the field office, she couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. The SUV screeched to a halt outside the field office, its reinforced doors barely closed before Olivia was stepping out, pulling Victor along. The building looked worse for wear after the earlier attack, with shattered windows and scorch marks marring its facade. Inside, agents buzzed around, some treating injuries while others pieced together evidence from the assault. "Carter." Reynolds called from across the room, motioning for her to follow him into a secure briefing area. Olivia pushed Victor into a chair before handing him off to 2 other agents for safekeeping. "This better be worth it," Olivia said as she entered the room. Reynolds handed her a folder, his expression grim. "It is. The drive has confirmed what we've suspected, but it's worse than we thought." Olivia flipped through the documents. The flash drive contained detailed blueprints of safe houses, transaction records, and coded communications. What caught her eye, however, was a name: Clive Rourke. The man was a ghost, untraceable in the official databases, but infamous in the underground world as a logistics mastermind for criminal syndicates. "Rourke," Olivia murmured. "He's orchestrating this?" "Looks like it," Reynolds said. "And there's more. He's planning a major arms shipment tomorrow night. If it goes through, it'll put enough firepower in the hands of these syndicates to start a small war." Olivia's mind raced. "We need to move now." "Where's the shipment?" "We traced the location to an abandoned dockyard on the west side of town," Reynolds said. "It's heavily guarded, but if we strike fast, we can catch them off guard." "Then let's do it," Olivia said, her voice steady with determination. In the holding area, Victor sat under the watchful eyes of 2 agents. He fidgeted nervously, his guilt gnawing at him. "This is all my fault," he thought. If it weren't for his betrayal of the syndicate, the FBI wouldn't be in this mess. He glanced at the agents and said, "I need to talk to Carter." "It's urgent." One of the agents sighed. You'll have to wait. No, you don't understand, Victor insisted. There's something I didn't tell her, about Rourke. The agents exchanged a glance before one of them left to inform Olivia. Olivia was suiting up with her tactical gear when the agent found her. Carter, Victor's asking for you. Says it's urgent. Olivia sighed, adjusting her earpiece. This better not be a waste of time. She entered the holding area, her expression unreadable. What is it, Victor? We're on a tight schedule. Victor leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. Rourke's smarter than you think. If you hit the dockyard, you're walking into a trap. Olivia's eyes narrowed. How do you know? Because I helped plan it, Victor admitted, his voice breaking. Before I tried to get out. It's a setup. He knew the FBI was closing in, so he made the dockyard look like the target. The real shipment is happening somewhere else. Where? Olivia demanded. Victor hesitated. There's a second location, an industrial plant on the outskirts of the city. They'll be there tomorrow night, loading the shipment onto trucks. Olivia stared at him, her mind racing. Why didn't you tell us this before? I was scared, Victor said. But after everything you've done, I couldn't let you walk into an ambush. Olivia stepped back, processing the information. If Victor was right, they were about to waste valuable resources on a decoy while Rourke's operation continued unchecked. She tapped her earpiece. Reynolds, we've got a change of plans. I need to brief the team. The agents gathered in the briefing room, the air thick with tension. Olivia explained what Victor had told her, and while some were skeptical, the majority agreed they couldn't afford to ignore the tip. We'll divide into 2 teams, Olivia said. Team A will hit the dockyard as planned to keep them distracted. Team B, led by me, will head to the industrial plant. We strike simultaneously. Reynolds nodded. Let's hope he's telling the truth. He knows what happens if he's not, Olivia said coldly. The next night, Olivia and her team approached the industrial plant under cover of darkness. The sprawling complex was eerily quiet, its chimneys silhouetted against the moonlit sky. Olivia signaled for her team to spread out and secure the perimeter. Inside, the hum of machinery and muffled voices confirmed Victor's intel. Crates of weapons were being loaded onto trucks, and among the workers stood Clive Rourke himself, barking orders. He was a tall, imposing figure, his face partially obscured by a scar that ran from his temple to his jaw. Olivia's grip tightened on her weapon. Visual on Rourke, she whispered into her earpiece. Engaging in 3, 2. Before she could give the signal, a hand clamped over her mouth, and she was yanked backward into the shadows. She struggled, but her assailant was strong, dragging her deeper into the dark. When Olivia came to, she was bound to a chair in a dimly lit room. Rourke stood in front of her, his eyes cold and calculating. Well, well, he said, his voice dripping with mockery. Agent Carter. I've heard so much about you. Olivia's jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. You've been quite the thorn in my side, Rourke continued. But this is where it ends. He gestured to a timer on the wall. It was counting down from 10 minutes. When that hits 0, this entire building goes up in flames. And you, my dear, will be nothing but a footnote in FBI history. Olivia's mind raced as she scanned the room for a way out. The ropes binding her were tight, but she could feel the sharp edge of a broken pipe against her hand. She began sawing at the ropes discreetly, her heart pounding with each passing second. Rourke leaned in closer. Any last words? Olivia smirked. Yeah. You're going to regret underestimating me. Just as the ropes gave way, the door burst open, and her team stormed in, weapons drawn. Olivia sprang to her feet, grabbing a nearby metal rod and swinging it at Rourke. The impact sent him sprawling, but he recovered quickly, drawing a knife. The room erupted into chaos as agents engaged Rourke's men. Olivia faced off against Rourke, their fight brutal and unrelenting. He was strong, but she was faster, using his size against him. With a final well-placed strike, she disarmed him and pinned him to the ground. The timer beeped, signaling the final minute. Olivia shouted, "Get the timer. Now." One of her teammates managed to disarm the bomb with seconds to spare, and the room fell silent except for the labored breathing of the agents. Olivia looked down at Rourke, her knee pressing into his chest. "It's over," she said. He smirked through the pain. "You think this stops anything? There's always someone else to take my place." "Maybe," Olivia said, cuffing him. But you won't be around to see it. As Rourke was hauled away, Olivia allowed herself a brief moment of relief. They'd stopped the shipment, captured the mastermind, and survived another day. But she knew the fight was far from over. The industrial plant was swarming with FBI agents by dawn, securing the site and cataloging the massive cache of weapons. Olivia stood on the perimeter, her hands resting on her hips as she surveyed the scene. The sting of her cuts and bruises was a sharp reminder of the night's chaos, but the mission was a success. Rourke was in custody, and his operation had been dismantled, for now. Reynolds approached, his face a mix of exhaustion and relief. "Nice work in there, Carter. We got him." Olivia nodded, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Yeah, but he was too calm. He knows something we don't." Reynolds sighed. "We'll get it out of him in interrogation. For now, get some rest." "You've earned it." "I will," Olivia said, though she had no intention of resting just yet. Back at the field office, Olivia watched through the two-way glass as Rourke sat in the interrogation room. His expression was unreadable, his hands cuffed to the table. She could feel the arrogance radiating off him even through the glass. "You want a crack at him?" Reynolds asked, stepping up beside her. Olivia shook her head. "Not yet. Let him stew for a while. He'll talk eventually." Reynolds raised an eyebrow. "Since when are you patient?" "Since now," Olivia said, her tone clipped. She turned and headed to her desk, needing a moment to regroup. As she sat down, Victor approached cautiously, his hands stuffed into his pockets. "Hey," he said, his voice tentative. Olivia looked up, her expression unreadable. "You shouldn't be wandering around." "I just wanted to thank you," Victor said, "for not giving up on me. I know I made this harder than it needed to be." Olivia leaned back in her chair, studying him. "You're lucky you're still breathing, Victor. Don't mistake that for forgiveness." Victor nodded, swallowing hard. "I get it. But I want to make things right. If there's anything else you need to know about Rourke or the Syndicate, I'll tell you." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "If there's something you haven't told us, now's the time." Victor hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Rourke has a contingency plan. If he ever gets caught, there's a network of operatives ready to act. They're not just in this city, they're nationwide." Olivia's jaw tightened. "And what are they supposed to do?" "Take out everyone connected to his capture," Victor said. "That includes you." The weight of Victor's words settled heavily on Olivia as she walked back to the interrogation room. She couldn't afford to wait any longer. Entering the room, she closed the door behind her and sat across from Rourke, her gaze locked on his. "Well, if it isn't the infamous Agent Carter," Rourke said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Come to gloat." "No," Olivia replied, her tone icy. "I'm here to talk about your contingency plan." Rourke's smirk faltered for a split second before he recovered. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb," Olivia said, leaning forward. "We know you've got people ready to clean up your mess. You can either cooperate, or you can watch them fail while you rot in prison." Rourke chuckled. "You think you've won, don't you? You've barely scratched the surface." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "Keep talking." He leaned back, a smug expression on his face. "You're in over your head, Agent. You think taking me down ends this? There are people out there more dangerous than you can imagine. And they don't take kindly to interference." Before Olivia could press further, an alarm blared through the building. She shot to her feet, her hand instinctively reaching for her weapon. The door burst open, and Reynolds appeared, his face pale. "We've got a situation," he said. "There's been an attack at the safe house." They were targeting Victor. Olivia and Reynolds raced to the safe house, their minds racing. When they arrived, the scene was chaos. Windows were shattered, and the front door hung off its hinges. Agents were treating injuries, while others secured the area. "What happened?" Olivia demanded. One of the agents stepped forward, her face streaked with dirt. A group of masked assailants stormed the building. They knew exactly where to hit. "We managed to fend them off, but they got away." "Victor?" Olivia asked, her stomach twisting. "He's alive," the agent said. "We moved him to a secure location before they could reach him." Relief flooded through Olivia, but it was short-lived. This attack was a message. Rourke's network was already in motion. Later that night, Olivia sat in her office, poring over files and surveillance footage. Every lead felt like a dead end, and the weight of the situation pressed heavily on her. She couldn't shake Rourke's smug expression or Victor's warning. They were up against something far bigger than they'd anticipated. Her phone buzzed, and she answered it without hesitation. Carter. It was Reynolds. We've got intel on one of Rourke's top operatives. Meet me in the briefing room. As Olivia hung up and headed to the meeting, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The syndicate was fighting back, and they were playing for keeps. If she was going to survive this, she'd need every ounce of her skill and determination. And even then, it might not be enough. The briefing room was tense, the atmosphere charged with urgency. Agents sat around a large table, their faces illuminated by the glow of a projector displaying a dossier. Olivia entered and immediately locked eyes with Reynolds, who was already mid-sentence. "This is Jessica Lane," Reynolds said, pointing to the photo of a woman with sharp features and piercing eyes. "She's one of Rourke's top operatives, logistics coordination, and according to our intel, a key player in his contingency network." Olivia took a seat, scanning the information. Jessica's file detailed a history of covert operations, specialized training in demolitions, and an unsettling reputation for eliminating obstacles without hesitation. "Where is she now?" Olivia asked. Reynolds clicked to the next slide, showing a map with a location circled. "A warehouse on the outskirts of town. Surveillance suggests she's rallying resources for their next move." "She's not just rallying," Olivia said, piecing it together. "She's cleaning house. They're tying up loose ends before the FBI can dismantle the network." Reynolds nodded grimly. "Exactly. We need to move on her before she slips away. This might be our only shot at getting ahead of Rourke's plan." Olivia stood. "I'll lead the team." The warehouse loomed in the distance, its towering structure bathed in the cold light of the moon. Olivia and her team approached cautiously, their movements synchronized and silent. Through her scope, Olivia spotted guards patrolling the perimeter, highly trained, heavily armed. She tapped her earpiece. "Visual on hostiles. Standard formation. We'll breach on my mark." The team spread out, taking positions. Olivia felt the familiar rush of adrenaline as she signaled the countdown. At 0, the agents moved as one, breaching the warehouse with precision. Inside, chaos erupted. Gunfire rang out, ricocheting off metal beams and crates. Olivia pressed forward, her movements swift and calculated. She spotted Jessica Lane near the center of the warehouse, shouting orders as her operatives scrambled to defend their position. "Lane's in sight," Olivia said into her earpiece. "Engaging." She advanced, taking down guards with well-placed shots. Jessica noticed her and immediately fled deeper into the warehouse, disappearing behind a stack of shipping containers. Olivia pursued Jessica, weaving through the maze of containers. Her sharp instincts kept her alert, every shadow a potential threat. She finally cornered Jessica near a stairwell leading to the catwalk above. "Jessica Lane." Olivia shouted, her weapon trained on the operative. "Drop your weapon and put your hands where I can see them." Jessica turned slowly, a smug smile spreading across her face. "You must be Agent Carter. Rourke warned me about you." "Last warning," Olivia said, her tone unwavering. "Drop it." Jessica's eyes darted to the side, and Olivia caught the movement too late. A hidden operative stepped out from behind a container, aiming a rifle at Olivia. The shot fired, grazing Olivia's arm as she dove for cover. Jessica bolted up the stairs, leaving her operative to cover her escape. Olivia gritted her teeth against the pain, returning fire and taking down the gunman before giving chase. The catwalk creaked under Olivia's boots as she reached the top. Jessica was near the end, trying to open a hatch to the roof. Olivia raised her weapon, her voice cutting through the din. "Don't move." Jessica froze, turning slowly. "You don't know what you're getting into, Carter. Taking me down won't stop this." "Maybe not," Olivia said, "but it'll slow you down." Jessica smirked. "Good luck with that." Before Olivia could react, Jessica tossed a flashbang. The sudden burst of light and sound disoriented Olivia, forcing her to shield her eyes. When the disorientation faded, Jessica was gone. Back on the ground, Olivia regrouped with her team. Several operatives were in custody, and the warehouse was being secured, but Jessica's escape left a bitter taste. Reynolds approached, his expression serious. "You okay?" "Just a scratch," Olivia said, motioning to her bandaged arm. Jessica slipped away, "but we've got her people. They might lead us to her." Reynolds nodded. We also found something else. He handed Olivia a tablet displaying blueprints. It's for a government building downtown. Looks like they're planning a major attack. Olivia's eyes widened as she studied the plans. They're going after federal offices. This isn't just about cleaning house. They're trying to cripple us. Later that night, Olivia sat alone in the field office, the weight of the mission pressing heavily on her. Jessica's words echoed in her mind. You don't know what you're getting into. Her phone buzzed, breaking her train of thought. It was a message from an unknown number. You're in over your head, Carter. Leave this alone, or you'll regret it. Olivia's jaw tightened as she stared at the message. This wasn't just a case anymore, it was personal. And she wasn't about to back down. As she prepared for the next move, a single thought lingered. If Jessica and Rourke were willing to go this far, what else were they capable of? The next phase of the syndicate's plan was already in motion, and Olivia knew they were running out of time. The field office was alive with activity the following morning. Agents moved with urgency, piecing together the fragments of intel recovered from the warehouse. Olivia stood at the center of the chaos, her mind racing as she studied the blueprints of the federal office building. Every detail seemed designed to maximize damage, a coordinated assault aimed at destabilizing operations and striking fear. Reynolds approached, holding a fresh cup of coffee. We've confirmed the target, he said, setting the cup on the table. The federal building downtown. Attack is scheduled for 48 hours from now. Olivia nodded, her eyes narrowing. How are they pulling it off? Intel points to an underground tunnel system, Reynolds said, tapping on a highlighted section of the blueprints. It runs beneath the building and connects to several access points around the city. They're planning to plant explosives along structural supports. Olivia exhaled sharply. We need to shut this down before they even get close. We've already deployed teams to secure the tunnels, Reynolds said. But Jessica's still out there, and she's not the type to sit back and let us dismantle her operation. Then we need to draw her out, Olivia said, her mind working quickly. She's bold, but she's also methodical. If we can disrupt her network, she'll be forced to act. Reynolds raised an eyebrow. You've got a plan? I do, Olivia said. But it's risky. That evening, Olivia sat across from Victor in a secure room. His face was pale, and his nervous energy was palpable. You want me to do what? He asked, his voice trembling. We need you to reach out to Jessica, Olivia said. She still thinks you're valuable. Use that to lure her in. Victor's eyes widened. You don't understand. If she knows I'm working with you, she'll kill me. She'll try, Olivia said firmly. But we'll be there. You're our best shot at getting to her before the attack. Victor leaned back, shaking his head. You're asking me to walk into a trap. No, Olivia said, her tone softening. I'm asking you to help us stop her before more lives are lost. You said you wanted to make things right. This is your chance. Victor swallowed hard, his hands trembling as he nodded. Okay, I'll do it. The next night, Victor sat nervously at a dimly lit cafe, his phone clutched in his hand. Olivia and her team were stationed nearby, monitoring every movement. The tension was thick as Victor dialed a number he hadn't used in months. Jessica, he said when the line connected. It's Victor. There was a long pause before a cold voice responded. You've got some nerve calling me. I know, Victor said quickly. But I have information you need, something big. Meet me, and I'll explain. Why would I trust you? Jessica asked, suspicion heavy in her tone. You don't have to trust me, Victor said. But if you ignore this, you'll regret it. Another pause, and then Jessica's voice came through, sharp and decisive. Fine. Same place as before. 20 minutes. Victor ended the call, his hands shaking. She's coming, he said into his earpiece. Good, Olivia responded. Stay calm. We've got eyes on you. 20 minutes later, Jessica entered the cafe, her sharp eyes scanning the room. She spotted Victor and walked over, her expression unreadable. Olivia, watching from a nearby surveillance van, held her breath. Victor, Jessica said, sitting across from him. I didn't think I'd see you again. I didn't think I'd be here either, Victor said, forcing a nervous smile. But I have something you'll want. Jessica leaned forward, her gaze piercing. I'm listening. Victor hesitated, his fear evident. The FBI, they're onto you. They know about the tunnels. Jessica's expression darkened. And how would you know that? Because I've been watching, Victor said, choosing his words carefully. I can help you stay ahead of them, but I need protection. Jessica studied him for a long moment before smirking. You're lying. You've been compromised. Before Victor could respond, Jessica drew a small pistol, aiming it at his chest. The cafe erupted into chaos as patrons screamed and ducked for cover. Olivia and her team sprang into action. Move in. Olivia shouted into her radio. Agents stormed the cafe, weapons drawn. Jessica fired a single shot, grazing Victor's shoulder, before overturning the table and making a break for the exit. Olivia sprinted after her, weaving through the panicked crowd. Jessica bolted into the alley behind the cafe, her footsteps echoing off the brick walls. Olivia was close behind, her weapon drawn. Jessica! Stop! Jessica didn't slow, vaulting over a fence and disappearing into the shadows. Olivia climbed after her, adrenaline fueling her pursuit. The chase led them to a construction site, the half-finished structure a maze of scaffolding and debris. Olivia's breath came in sharp bursts as she closed the gap. Finally, she spotted Jessica climbing a ladder to the top of the site. End of the line, Lane. Olivia shouted, her voice echoing. Jessica turned, her face twisted with fury. You don't get it, Carter. This isn't just about me. You can stop me, but you won't stop what's coming. Olivia aimed her weapon. Let's find out. Jessica hesitated, then lunged for a nearby beam, swinging it toward Olivia. The fight was brutal, each strike calculated and ruthless. Olivia's training gave her the upper hand, but Jessica's desperation made her unpredictable. Finally, Olivia delivered a well-placed kick, sending Jessica sprawling. She aimed her weapon again. It's over. Jessica laughed bitterly. You think this stops anything? You're too late. Before Olivia could respond, Jessica grabbed a small device from her pocket and pressed a button. A distant explosion rocked the air, followed by another and another. Olivia's stomach sank as realization hit. Jessica had triggered a secondary plan. What did you do? Olivia demanded. Jessica smirked. The game's just beginning. The sound of approaching sirens filled the air as Olivia secured Jessica in cuffs. The fight wasn't over, not yet. But Olivia knew this was just the beginning of something much larger. The explosions reverberated in Olivia's ears as she shoved Jessica into the back of a waiting FBI van. The sight of plumes of smoke rising in the distance sent a chill down her spine. The blasts hadn't been at the federal building, at least not yet. Instead, they targeted the city's main power grid, plunging large sections of the city into darkness. Secure her, Olivia barked to the agents, slamming the van door shut. And keep her locked down. She doesn't move until I say so. Jessica smirked through the window as the van sped off, her arrogance as palpable as the tension in the air. Reynolds ran up to Olivia, his face grim. Power stations at 3 locations were just hit. Citywide blackout is imminent if they manage to take out the next one. And let me guess, Olivia said, her voice sharp. They've timed this to divert resources from their main attack. Exactly, Reynolds replied. This is a smokescreen. With the city scrambling to restore power, they'll have a clear shot at the federal building. Olivia clenched her fists, her mind racing. We can't let them split us up. They want us distracted. We don't have a choice, Reynolds said. I've already deployed teams to secure the remaining stations. We need to double down on protecting the building. Olivia exhaled sharply. Fine. But I want Jessica's network dismantled tonight. I'm not letting them regroup. Back at the field office, Olivia interrogated Jessica in a stark room lit only by emergency backup lights. Jessica sat calmly, her hands cuffed to the table, her demeanor almost mocking. You're going to tell me everything, Olivia said, leaning over the table. Who's coordinating these attacks? Jessica chuckled. You think you can stop them? They're already 10 steps ahead. By the time you figure it out, the city will be in chaos. Olivia's patience was wearing thin. Then why haven't they come for you? If you're so important, why are you expendable? Jessica's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second, but she recovered quickly. You're fishing, Carter. It won't work. Olivia slammed her hand on the table, making Jessica flinch. You're scared, aren't you? Because you know they'll come for you. You're not as untouchable as you think. Jessica's silence spoke volumes, and Olivia pressed on. Help us stop this, and maybe you'll live to see a trial. Jessica met Olivia's gaze, her bravado cracking. You don't understand. They don't care about me, or you. If you think you're a target now, wait until you see what happens when you stop being useful. Meanwhile, Victor sat in a secure holding area, his shoulder bandaged from Jessica's earlier attack. He fidgeted nervously, his thoughts racing. The explosions and the growing danger weighed heavily on him. He'd already betrayed the syndicate once, but the stakes were higher now. An agent entered the room and handed him a tablet. Agent Carter wants you to see this. Victor stared at the screen. It displayed live footage from surveillance drones near the federal building. Groups of masked operatives were gathering at access points, setting up equipment under the cover of darkness. His stomach churned. They weren't just planning a bombing, they were preparing to storm the building. He looked up at the agent. You have to tell Carter, they're not just targeting the structure. They're going for the people inside. Olivia stood in the command center, coordinating efforts to secure the federal building. The information from Victor confirmed her worst fears. This wasn't just about infrastructure, it was an assault on the heart of the government. They're using the tunnels to bypass security, Olivia said, pointing to the map on the screen. We need to block every entry point and flush them out. Reynolds nodded. We've got teams in place, but they'll need support. This is going to get messy. It always does, Olivia said, grabbing her gear. I'm leading the charge. Reynolds frowned. Are you sure? You've been running on fumes since this started. I'm not sitting this one out, Olivia said firmly. We need every advantage we can get. The tunnels were a maze of concrete and steel, dimly lit by flickering emergency lights. Olivia and her team moved silently, their footsteps muffled by the damp floor. Every corner was a potential ambush, every shadow a hiding spot. Stay sharp, Olivia whispered into her radio. They're here somewhere. A sudden noise made the team freeze. Voices echoed from a nearby corridor, followed by the unmistakable sound of metal clanging against stone. Olivia signaled for the team to fan out, each agent taking a position along the narrow walls. As they moved closer, they spotted the operatives unloading crates of explosives. Olivia's heart pounded as she counted their numbers, more than they had anticipated. She tapped her earpiece. Eyes on target. Moving to engage. The team struck swiftly, their coordinated assault catching the operatives off guard. Gunfire erupted, the sharp cracks echoing through the tunnels. Olivia moved with precision, taking down one assailant after another. In the chaos, Olivia spotted a figure coordinating the operatives. He was tall, his face obscured by a mask, but his commanding presence was unmistakable. This wasn't just another foot soldier, it was someone higher up in the chain. Olivia fought her way toward him, her focus unwavering. As she approached, the figure turned, locking eyes with her. He raised his weapon, but Olivia was faster, firing a shot that hit him in the leg. He stumbled, dropping his weapon, and Olivia tackled him to the ground. Who are you? She demanded, pinning him down. The man chuckled, his voice distorted by the mask. You'll never stop us. This is bigger than you can imagine. Olivia ripped off his mask, revealing a face she didn't recognize, but his insignia matched those in the intel from Jessica's network. Start talking, Olivia said, her voice icy. The man smirked. You're already too late. Before Olivia could respond, an explosion shook the tunnel, sending debris raining down. The team scrambled for cover as the man slipped out of Olivia's grip, vanishing into the chaos. As the dust settled, Olivia regrouped with her team. They had neutralized the explosives, but the leader had escaped, and the federal building was still under threat. Olivia's earpiece crackled to life. Carter, we've got a situation, Reynolds said. The main assault team is moving on the building now. Olivia clenched her fists. We'll meet them there. This ends tonight. Her determination burned brighter than ever. Jessica's network was unraveling, but the final battle was just beginning. The streets around the federal building were eerily quiet as Olivia and her team approached in armored vehicles. The air was thick with tension, every shadow a potential threat. From a distance, Olivia could see the faint glow of flashlights moving in and out of the structure's lower levels. The syndicate's operatives were already inside. Reynolds' voice crackled through her earpiece. The assault team is in position. Main entrances are secured, but they've breached through the east tunnel. We need to move now. Copy that, Olivia replied. She turned to her team, their faces grim but determined. This is it. We clear the building, neutralize the threat, and secure any intel we can find. Stay sharp. The agents nodded in unison as the vehicles came to a halt. They disembarked swiftly, fanning out to cover the perimeter. Olivia's heart pounded as she led her team through a service entrance, the sound of distant voices and footsteps guiding them deeper into the building. Inside, the halls were dimly lit, emergency lights casting eerie shadows. The operatives moved with precision, planting devices along structural beams and security panels. Olivia motioned for her team to stop as she counted the hostiles ahead. 5 targets, she whispered. We take them quietly. Go. The team moved like shadows, each agent taking down an operative in perfect sync. Olivia neutralized the last one with a swift strike, catching him before he could sound an alarm. She examined the device he had been working on, a high-powered explosive wired to a central detonator. These aren't standard, Olivia muttered, inspecting the intricate wiring. They've upgraded. Reynolds' voice came through the earpiece. What's the status? Explosives planted throughout the structure, Olivia replied. They've got a failsafe. This isn't just a bomb, it's a chain reaction. We'll need the tech team in here to defuse it. Understood, Reynolds said. But you've got another problem. We've spotted Jessica Lane near the control room on the upper level. She's running point. Olivia's jaw tightened. I'm on it. The climb to the upper level was tense, each creak of the metal stairs making Olivia's pulse quicken. As she approached the control room, she could hear Jessica's voice, sharp and commanding. Is the detonator in place? Jessica asked one of her operatives. Almost, the man replied. We're running out of time. Then move faster, Jessica snapped. Olivia took a deep breath and signaled her team to surround the room. On her count, they breached the door, weapons drawn. FBI. Drop your weapons. Olivia shouted. Jessica froze for a moment, her sharp eyes narrowing. Then, in one fluid motion, she flipped the table in front of her, providing cover as she drew her pistol. Gunfire erupted, the confined space amplifying the noise. Olivia ducked behind a console, exchanging fire with Jessica and her operatives. The room was chaos, sparks flying as bullets ricocheted off metal surfaces. Olivia's focus was razor-sharp as she advanced, taking out 2 operatives and cornering Jessica. Jessica lunged at Olivia, the 2 women colliding in a brutal hand-to-hand fight. Jessica's strikes were fast and relentless, but Olivia countered with precision, her training and determination driving her forward. You can't stop this. Jessica snarled, swinging a metal rod at Olivia. I've heard that before, Olivia shot back, dodging the attack and delivering a swift kick to Jessica's ribs. Jessica stumbled but recovered quickly, grabbing a shard of broken glass and lunging at Olivia. Olivia sidestepped, twisting Jessica's arm and forcing her to drop the glass. With a final decisive move, Olivia slammed Jessica against the console, pinning her down. It's over, Olivia said, panting as she cuffed Jessica's hands behind her back. Jessica laughed bitterly. You still don't get it, do you? You're too late. Olivia glanced at the screen Jessica had been working on. A countdown timer was flashing, 3 minutes remaining. Reynolds, we've got a live countdown. Olivia shouted into her earpiece. Tech team needs to defuse this now. On their way, Reynolds replied. Can you hold it off? Olivia scanned the controls, her mind racing. I'll try. As the tech team scrambled to reach the control room, Olivia worked frantically to delay the countdown. Sweat dripped down her face as she bypassed circuits and rerouted connections, her hands moving with practiced urgency. Come on, she muttered, the timer ticking down to 2 minutes. Jessica smirked from her restrained position. Even if you stop this, it's just the beginning. Rourke's network is everywhere. Olivia ignored her, focusing on the task at hand. With 30 seconds left, the tech team burst into the room, their equipment in tow. We've got it from here, Agent Carter, one of them said, quickly taking over. Olivia stepped back, her chest heaving as she watched them work. With only 5 seconds to spare, the timer stopped, the flashing numbers replaced by a static screen. The room fell silent except for the sound of heavy breathing. Olivia turned to Jessica, her expression cold. Looks like your plan failed. Jessica didn't respond, her defiance replaced by a flicker of fear. Back at the field office, Jessica was taken into high-security custody, her network in shambles. Olivia stood in the command center, watching as agents celebrated the successful operation. Yet, a sense of unease lingered. Reynolds approached, handing her a file. We've got more names from the data we recovered. This isn't over. Olivia nodded, her resolve unshaken. It never is. As she looked out at the city lights, flickering back to life after the blackout, Olivia knew the fight against Rourke's syndicate was far from finished. But for now, they had won a critical battle. And she wasn't going to stop until every last one of them was brought to justice. The aftermath of the operation had left the field office buzzing with activity. Agents worked tirelessly to sift through the mountain of intel retrieved from the federal building and the syndicate's network. Olivia, however, couldn't shake the lingering unease that Jessica's words had left her with. Rourke's network is everywhere. Olivia sat at her desk, scrolling through files detailing the syndicate's reach. Each new piece of information painted a grim picture. This wasn't just a regional operation. It was a sprawling web of illegal activity that stretched across the country. Arms deals, trafficking, and even infiltration into key government systems were all meticulously documented. Reynolds approached, holding a steaming mug of coffee. "You should take a break. You've been at this all night." Olivia shook her head. "There's no time. We may have stopped one attack, but there's no telling how many more they have in play." Reynolds sighed. "We've got teams working around the clock. You've done your part." Olivia's phone buzzed, interrupting their conversation. She picked it up and saw a message from an unknown number. "You think this is over? Check your email." Her heart skipped a beat as she opened her laptop and found an encrypted email. It contained a single attachment, a video file. Olivia clicked it, and the screen filled with grainy footage of a man in a darkened room. "You've meddled for the last time, Agent Carter," the man said, his voice distorted. "This was never just about one attack. You've only scratched the surface. If you value your life, walk away now." Olivia stared at the screen, her jaw tightening. Whoever this was, they weren't bluffing. Later that day, Olivia and Reynolds gathered a small team in a secure briefing room. She played the video for them, the ominous warning hanging in the air like a storm cloud. "This isn't just a threat," Olivia said, her voice firm. "It's a challenge. They want us to know they're still out there." One of the agents, a tech specialist named Harris, raised his hand. "The video was routed through multiple proxies, but I managed to trace part of the signal. It originated from a warehouse in the industrial district." Reynolds frowned. "Another warehouse? These guys really love their hideouts." "It's not just a hideout," Olivia said. "It's a command center. If we take it down, we'll cut off their ability to coordinate." Reynolds nodded. "Then let's gear up. We move tonight." The warehouse was a fortress, surrounded by high fences and patrolled by armed guards. Olivia and her team approached under the cover of darkness, using night vision goggles to navigate the terrain. "Multiple hostiles on the perimeter," Harris whispered through the comms. "Heavy security inside." Olivia surveyed the area, formulating a plan. "We split into two teams. Team A breaches from the north entrance. Team B takes the south. We converge in the center and secure the command room." The agents nodded, their expressions steely as they moved into position. Olivia led Team A, her movements precise and silent. As they approached the entrance, she held up a hand, signaling them to stop. "Claymores," she whispered, pointing to the mines rigged along the doorway. She crouched, carefully disarming the explosive while the team covered her. Once the path was clear, they moved inside, their weapons at the ready. The air was thick with tension as they advanced through the dimly lit corridors. Olivia's earpiece crackled with updates from Team B as they engaged guards on their side. In the command room, a group of operatives worked frantically, their faces illuminated by the glow of computer screens. They were oblivious to the approaching agents until Olivia and her team burst in, weapons drawn. "Hands where we can see them!" Olivia shouted. The operatives froze, their hands slowly rising. Olivia scanned the room, her eyes landing on a large screen displaying live feeds of various locations, other warehouses, shipping ports, and what appeared to be a government building. "This is it," she said, gesturing to the tech team. "Get all the data off these systems. We need everything." As the tech team worked, Olivia turned her attention to the man seated at the head of the table. He was older, his graying hair and calm demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos around him. "Who are you?" Olivia demanded. The man smiled faintly. "Just a cog in the machine, Agent Carter. You can dismantle me, but the machine keeps running." Olivia leaned in, her voice cold. "Then tell me who's running it." The man's smile widened. You'll find out soon enough. As the data transfer completed, alarms suddenly blared throughout the warehouse. Olivia's earpiece crackled with Harris's voice. They've activated a self-destruct sequence. We've got 5 minutes to get out. Move. Olivia shouted, grabbing the man by the collar and dragging him toward the exit. The team moved quickly, dodging collapsing beams and bursts of flame as the building began to crumble. They barely made it out as the warehouse exploded in a fiery blast, the shockwave knocking them off their feet. Olivia coughed, her ears ringing as she looked around to ensure her team was safe. Reynolds approached, helping her to her feet. You okay? Yeah, Olivia said, brushing off debris. She held up a flash drive. And we got what we came for. Back at the field office, the tech team worked around the clock to decrypt the data. Olivia watched over their shoulders, her exhaustion forgotten as she scanned the information. It was a treasure trove, lists of operatives, locations, and financial records. But one name stood out, Clive Rourke. He's still pulling the strings, Olivia muttered. Even from behind bars. Reynolds nodded grimly. And he's got help. Big help. Olivia's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. You can't stop what's coming, Carter. But we're coming for you. She clenched her jaw, her determination hardening. Let them come. I'm ready. The battle was far from over, but Olivia wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. The field office was in a controlled frenzy as agents prepared for what was shaping up to be the final battle against Rourke's syndicate. The decrypted data revealed a coordinated operation involving high-ranking government infiltrators, hidden weapon caches, and sleeper cells across the country. At the center of it all was a final desperate move, a large-scale attack planned for the following night. They're planning to hit multiple locations simultaneously, Reynolds said, pointing to the map pinned to the wall. But their headquarters is here, a private airstrip outside the city. Rourke's second-in-command, someone named Helix, is running the show. Olivia studied the map, her jaw set. If we take out Helix and the command center, the network will crumble. This ends tonight. The airstrip was a fortress of activity as Olivia's team arrived under the cover of darkness. Helicopters hovered overhead, agents rappelled down, and armored vehicles formed a perimeter. The element of surprise was gone, but Olivia didn't care. They were ready for war. Reynolds's voice came through her earpiece. Carter, we've got operatives inside the hangar and guards patrolling the perimeter. Helix is likely in the command tower. Understood, Olivia replied. We'll secure the hangar first, then move on the tower. The team advanced, their movements silent and coordinated. Guards were neutralized with precision as they made their way to the hangar. Inside, rows of crates containing weapons and explosives confirmed the scale of the syndicate's operation. Plant charges on these crates, Olivia ordered. If we can't carry it out, we destroy it. The team worked quickly, but an alarm suddenly blared, and the hangar erupted in chaos. Syndicate operatives swarmed the area, their weapons trained on the intruders. Hold your ground. Olivia shouted, returning fire as the team took cover. The firefight was intense, bullets flying and ricocheting off metal surfaces. Olivia moved with precision, her training and determination guiding her every step. One by one, the operatives fell, but the resistance was fierce. Finally, the team secured the hangar and detonated the charges, the explosion lighting up the night sky. With the weapons destroyed, Olivia turned her attention to the command tower. Reynolds, we're moving on Helix, she said. Cover our advance. Copy that, Reynolds replied, his voice steady. The climb to the command tower was grueling, each step a test of endurance. Olivia led the charge, her weapon ready as they reached the top. Inside, Helix stood at a large console, his face illuminated by a dozen monitors displaying live feeds of the operation. You must be Agent Carter, Helix said, his voice calm despite the chaos outside. I've been expecting you. Step away from the console, Olivia said, her weapon trained on him. It's over. Helix smirked. Not quite. You see, this was never about winning. It was about proving a point. What point? Olivia demanded. That your system is flawed, Helix replied. That even your best agents can't stop what's inevitable. Olivia's eyes narrowed. We'll see about that. Helix suddenly lunged for a concealed weapon, but Olivia was faster. She fired, hitting him in the shoulder and sending him sprawling. As he lay on the ground, she approached, kicking the weapon out of reach. It's over, Olivia said, cuffing him. Is it? Helix sneered. You've won the battle, Agent Carter. But the war is far from over. Olivia ignored him, turning to the monitors. Harris, patch me into their network. Let's shut this down. Within minutes, the team had seized control of the command systems, deactivating the sleeper cells and securing the remaining operatives. The Syndicate's network collapsed in real time, their plans unraveling. Back at the field office, the mood was triumphant but subdued. The Syndicate was dismantled, its leaders captured or neutralized. Yet the weight of the mission lingered, a reminder of the cost of victory. Olivia stood on the rooftop, looking out at the city. The lights were bright again, a stark contrast to the darkness they'd faced. Reynolds joined her, handing her a cup of coffee. You did it, he said. We did it, Olivia corrected, a small smile on her lips. Reynolds nodded. You should take some time off. You've earned it. Olivia took a sip of coffee, her gaze steady. Maybe. But there's always more work to do. As the city returned to normal, Olivia reflected on the journey. She had faced racism, betrayal, and unimaginable danger, but she had emerged stronger. She had stood her ground, not just for herself but for everyone who couldn't. The fight was never easy, but Olivia Carter was a survivor, and she knew that as long as she was standing, justice would always have a chance. And for now, that was enough.